You need to give yourself permission to live the life you've always dreamed of, but never dared believe was really possible. And until you do, you will not live that life. In the next few minutes, I'm going to share with you some principles from Dr. Joe Dispenza that have changed my life, that allowed me to let go of my biggest limiting belief, which was the religion that I grew up believing was the only way things could work. And when I learned to let go of those limitations, my life really started to change, and I believe yours can too. I'm Jim, y'all, and I found peace, purpose, and prosperity in my own life, and I believe I can help you find the same. If that sounds like something you want more of, I invite you to subscribe below. There's a link there also. If you want to make a free call and discuss working one-on-one with me. What does Joe Dispenza say about escaping the life that we've always lived, giving ourselves permission to live a whole new life? Here's what he says. He says that we, for the most part, live our lives in what he calls our familiar past. And that means your life is one day laid on top of another day, laid on top of another day, laid on top of another day, and those days are stuck on repeat. He said about 90 to 95% of the thoughts that you think are the same thoughts you thought yesterday. And by the way, you have about 60 to 70,000 thoughts per day. So that's a lot of thinking in the same direction every single day in your life. I know for me, I grew up and was part of a really constrictive religious system of belief. I was an evangelical for so many years. I was an evangelical pastor for over 30 years. And I had one way of looking at life. And until I began to open my mind up to believing that God wanted better for me and that bigger for me was possible, I was limited in the things I could do, accomplish, in the life that I could live. I love what Jesus said about this concept. He said, I have come that you may have life and have it more abundantly. Now, what does that sound like to you? To me, that sounds like a pretty dang good life. That sounds like life overflowing. What is abundance? Abundance is endless. When I think of abundance, I think of the ocean. I think of waters that when you get in, you could never drink the ocean dry. You could back dump trucks into the ocean and fill them up all day, every day for years to come, and you would not empty the ocean. When I think of abundance, I think of the universe that is ever expanding, that's continually moving outward. God is continually creating all the time. It's getting bigger and bigger, and it's endless. I don't even understand it. How does something that's vast and endless continue to expand? That will blow your mind. That's abundance. And Jesus said, I came for you to have that kind of life. Now, is he talking about cash and Cadillacs? I think prosperity can be part of it. But I think more than that, it's peace and purpose. It's getting in tune with the you're made to be. Now, like I said, for me, I was held back for so long by my strict religious views that told me I was no good, told me that I was a sinner, that told me I was coming from a place of lack from the very get-go, and the only hope was to plug in to Jesus, who, by the way, I still believe in Jesus and the great things Jesus does, God does in this universe. But I've opened my mind up to a little bigger, or a lot bigger rather, picture of how all that works. And I was very limited in my belief in myself. When you grow up thinking that you start bad and the only good you can get is to connect to God, and you're still bad when you connect to God, that does things to a person's psyche. That does stuff to your belief system. And I had to let all of that go and begin to believe God don't make no junk, as we say in the South. God's creations are perfect. They are limitless. They are absolute perfection. Do we mess up? Is there problems in the world? Of course there is. Of course we do. Of course we have our struggles and our problems and our pains and our failures and all that stuff. But those are all learning opportunities while we're in this body on this planet. At our core, we are eternally, divinely constructed to live at a level of unending abundance. And boy, when I figured that out, it started to change for me. So what does Joe Dispenza have to do with this? Well, Joe gives us a lot of the science behind the spirituality of how things work in this universe. And he says most of us live this pattern of our familiar past, those days laid on top of other days, on top of other days, those 90 to 95% of the same thoughts every day. And he says this, if you want a new personal reality, you have to create a new personality. And what he means by that is you have to reprogram your subconscious to think in a new way. In that 90 to 95% of thoughts being the same every day, did you know about 90% of your thinking is done by your subconscious? Your subconscious is breathing for you right now. It's keeping your heart beating. It's doing a million things a second that you can't even fathom of, telling your body what to do. If you put your hand on a hot plate, your subconscious reacts through the amygdala. It'll tell you to pull it off before you even know it's hot. All of these things are going on in our brains and at a deeper level of the mind that we aren't even aware of. And if you want to change your life, you have to get into that hard drive, the subconscious of your brain, and begin to subconscious of your mind rather, and begin to reprogram it to think in a different way than you've always thought. However old you are, you have that many years of the same program running in the hard drive that's driving 90% of your life. If you don't change that, you're not going to change anything. What is the key to rewiring your subconscious? Thinking new thoughts. We only learn really in two ways when it comes to our subconscious thinking, the level, the hard drive that kind of drives us. One is when we are in theta brainwave activity. Now, here's the bad news about that. That ends at about age 7. Until you're 7 years old, your brain is opened up. It's running in theta brainwave state. So it's just like a funnel. It's just taking in everything. You're learning how to walk, how to talk, how to act, how to be, what is, what isn't, what God is not. You're learning what life is not, how people respond. You're learning all that. You're taking it in. And you're programming that supercomputer that is your subconscious. At about age 7, we begin to think on our own. We begin to take over the conscious mind, and suddenly we begin to form what we believe to be reality. Now, after that, the only time you are in theta wave brain activity is when you're first going to sleep and when you're first waking up, which, by the way, there's other videos I have below here if you want to jump on the channel and take a look on how to take advantage of that, how to program your brain through meditation and other practices. You first get up as you're going to bed. There are some things you can do to hack those small theta windows that we have right now. But the other thing, that's the bad news. We're kind of out of theta wave unless we're going to sleep or waking up. But here's the good news. The good news is we can habitually train our subconscious. It's like learning to drive a car. You learned to drive a car way after you were 7 years old, right? Now you drive your car, you listen to the radio and listen to podcasts, you eat in the car and drink in the car and think in the car and do all kinds of things, but think about driving the car. Why? Because through habit, you programmed your subconscious to know how to do it on autopilot, and you can do the same with your thoughts. What Dispenza says is, in a nutshell, this: if you want to create a new personal reality, you have to create a new personality, and here's how you do that. You do it by thinking new thoughts. Thoughts become things, is what Dispenza shares in so much of his work. The process for that is, when you have a thought, right after that thought, you have a feeling. You think the way you think and feel the way you feel because you've been thinking and feeling that way for a very long time in your life. And when you have thoughts that are wrapped and tied up with emotions, those are some very strong neural pathways, as they call it, neuroscience, superhighways that literally are physical pathways where electrical energy flows through your brain and thinks your thoughts, and you're stuck in those patterns because neurons that fire together, and they've created strong neural pathways. So these thoughts and feelings are wrapped up in this superpower of you, and you have to think a lot of new thoughts and feel a lot of new feelings to really change it. But when you start thinking new thoughts, telling yourself new things, new possibilities, you start feeling in new ways. And when you start feeling in new ways, now you're wrapping new powerful emotions to your thoughts, and guess what starts to change next? Your behaviors. You begin to behave in a new way. You believe new things about yourself. You believe new possibilities. You behave in new ways. You take new actions. You start to physically change the roadmap and the course of your life. You're no longer stuck in the familiar past. Now you're looking to a beautiful potential future. You're seeing new ways of living, and you're doing it right now, and the only time we ever really have, in the present. You're thinking a new way, you're feeling a new way, you're behaving in a new way, and then you start believing in a new way. That's what happened to me over the last year and a half. I began to believe in a whole new way, and that's what really kicked it into hyper gear when I really started to believe it. And when you believe in a new way, guess what you create? A new identity. you become a whole new you. And guess what that new you does? It circles all the way back around to the front. It thinks differently, it feels differently, it behaves differently, it believes differently, and it's a brand new you. And you create this super cycle of a new power and a new life. And guess what you start to live? The life of abundance that Jesus said you were intended to live, that God says he wants to give you and plug you into. That's the life you start to live, and you can do it today. And I can help. If you need a little help in your journey, tell me in the comments below. Jim, here's where I struggle with all this. It's okay. If you don't agree, you can blast me in the comments and say, this is, I had a guy tell me the other day, this is nonsense. It's junk. But I promise you, as they say in AA, it works if you work it. If you believe it, you'll be surprised the power it'll bring to your life. Tell me in the comments, what do you need a little help with today? I'd love to help you with that. I want to challenge you today to give yourself permission to become a brand new you and see where it takes you next.